And it was just like, this feels like it's being used as an excuse for bad behavior. And I'm not saying everyone does that, but that was that particular person. I just felt there was like a box or a set of rules. And I'm like, I don't believe that there is any set of rules about how to be us apart from our felt sense of what feels good. And again, that changes over time. Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, the show for disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries who know they're here to change the damn world. I'm Kylie Patchett, your voice and visibility catalyst, and here we dive into unapologetic truth, magnetic messaging, and visibility that actually feels good in your body, your bones, and your business. We share the stories of the out-of-the-box, neuro-sparkly, creative, witchy wild ones rewriting how we live, love, learn, and lead. This isn't about being louder. It's about being rooted, resonant, and regulated so you can be real, raw, and ready to roar. If you're done contorting yourself to fit the mold and you're ready to own your voice, your power, and your place in the revolution, welcome home. Let's dive in. Hello there. Welcome to the podcast. Another beautiful day here. My neighbour has just decided to turn on his whippersnipper, so we'll see how we go with the windows closed. Welcome back. I feel like there's lots that's been happening in the background that's kind of informing what I'm pulled to be talking about on this podcast. And today is a little bit of a behind the scenes of my own human design journey and why I'm officially obsessed with a very specific part of human design. Like most of us, I have come across human design many, many times over the years. In fact, I reckon the first time was when I was first in my coaching business around about 2015 or so. And a few people that I knew in a particular business group had gotten into this human design thing. And, you know, I love a personality type quiz. I love a human behavior kind of designed questionnaire. I love all of those things. What I don't love is when those things become just another box, right? And like, I am pathologically opposed to anyone telling me that the right way to do life is this. Because I'm like, I'm sorry, no. I am a geneticist by training. Every single person has individual genetics. Every single person has individual values and preferences and flow states and energetics. And you cannot tell me that me getting X on this quiz or whatever means that I should be doing this, because to me, there needs to be a lot more nuance, right? Like, individual people are individual because of tiny little differences, both on the genetic stage and also now on the gene key end of things, but I'll get to that in a sec. Anyway, so when I first came across human design, it was very much through the lens of the big, broad brushstroke parts of human design. So what type are you? What strategy are you? What authority do you have? Sometimes maybe down to the what sort of definition do you have? If you don't know any of these terms, it doesn't matter. It's just like, it's enough to know like there is so many different layers of human design, and the broadest like eagle eye view of us in terms of a human design perspective is these strategy type authority kind of end of things. So for me, I'm a manifester with a splenic authority, and I've got a split definition. So that's like the broadest brushstroke of who Kylie is, right? But there is so many more layers underneath that. And I found out something very interesting this week, which has got me thinking about how evolution is part of what we're designed for, both genetically, but also, you know, energetically, spiritually, everything. Like the universe likes to expand, so do we. And I don't mean expand as in, and this is probably a very important nuance, I don't mean expand as in always on the growth, because that is actually not the way nature designed. What I mean is to always be constantly moving towards our own evolution. And that happens in spirals. So it's not that we're always growing. It's that sometimes we're shedding and we're dropping leaves, like autumnal kind of feeling, like you are in the Northern Hemisphere at the moment. Or sometimes we're in that spring stage where we've got new growth and we're setting our sights on something new. Anyway, back then when I first came across human design, what I kept hearing was things like, oh, I can't do that. I can't initiate because I'm not a manifester. Or, oh, that's just because I'm a projector. Like, I'm just designed to sleep all the time. And okay, but like there's like 8 something billion people. Is it 8 or 9? I don't even know. I have to look that up because it's about the 3rd time I've said that this week. How can we possibly hope to sort those people into these 5 human design types? And then if we go one layer down, okay, being a manifestor is one thing. A manifestor with a splenic authority versus a manifestor with emotional authority, excuse me, are 2 different kind of creatures. But even then, there would be hundreds of thousands of people with those 2 things in their human design. Anyway, I kind of got turned off human design because of this like dogma around, or what I would say is dogma around, if I'm this, then I have to do that. And I'm just like, but any personality type quiz, any human behavior, anything like that, it needs to be filtered through our felt sense, our body for resonance or not resonance. And this is something I'm always saying to clients, like, don't just take my word for it. This is a co-creation. So something that I'm saying is going to filter through your felt awareness. And if it doesn't feel like a good match for you, like I always say the colander approach, like put it all in the colander. Anything that doesn't speak to you get flushed out through that colander. And you just hold the bits, the golds that you want to keep at this time. And the other thing about that is that we are constantly evolving our own identity, our own understanding, our own lived experience, our own years of being on the planet will give us a more and more nuanced, more and more deep understanding of both ourselves and the way that patterns work, etc. And so I got turned off by human design. Back then, if you'd asked me what my type was, I would have said I was a sacral generator 3-5. Now I know myself to be a splenic manifestor 6-2. If you're into human design, they are different animals. Anyway, so fast forward, about 5 years ago, human design came back into my awareness and I was like, you know what? I feel like there's something here. You know, when you know that there's like something tweaking in your like spidey senses that is like, there's something here that you need to dive into. So I was like, okay, I'm going to say yes to this. I love the book, The Surrender Experiment. Just basically whatever comes into your field, just say yes, lean in, see what happens. What could go wrong, right? Don't test that. Anyway, I lent in again to human design. I had a reading. I did understand more in terms of that reading was with, a really beautiful lady who I would still say definitely is a fantastic human design guide and had a real depth of understanding. So it wasn't that surface level. And she gave me some real nuggets in that reading. And I was like, oh, okay, some of this feels very strongly resonant. And one of the biggest gifts of that reading was just understanding that as a 3-5, or what I understood to myself to be at that stage, that my design was very much about snacking on things, seeing what they taste and spitting out what doesn't taste good. And as I've said before on this podcast, one of the big identity shifts that I have been asked to undertake or invited to undertake in the last, say, 5 years is just understanding that I used to have this frame of myself, which was like, if I could just stick at something, I would be so much further along. And I'm like, if you're not watching this on YouTube, this is heavily air quoted, so much further along. And I was constantly comparing myself to like friends that I have that are still in their forensic careers, for instance, or people that have always lived in the same place. And so, they might have paid off their house or been able to renovate or whatever. It was always this kind of like, well, here I am and here they are. What I wasn't seeing, and it's so funny because those exact same friends that I compare myself to look at our lives and go, I just am not that brave. Like, you've made so many cool decisions. You've traveled, you've lived across the world, you've done all of these things. You've lived in so many different places and we just would never have the courage. I'm like, isn't that interesting? Something that I've always judged myself negatively for, other people look at and say, oh, wow, I wish I was more like that. So that's, a lesson in itself. Anyway, I had this frame of myself that was like a bit flaky. That's the word that was like, oh, if you just stopped chopping and changing, for God's sake, you might be able to get somewhere, like a real inner critic thing. And one of the things that beautiful reader said back when I had that design reading, which I think I was trying to work out the date this would have been. It might have been maybe 3 years ago, possibly not as many as 5. Anyway, whenever it was, one of the biggest gifts that she gave me was this 3-5 is meant to be trial and erroring through life. So that is the way that I learn, experiment, build experience, and am actually able to then pass it on to other people, which is more of the 5-line sort of flavor. Anyway, so that was like, okay, good. So then I went and did a couple more human design self-study courses. I learned a bit more. I started paying more attention to some of those nuggets that had really resonated. Another one of those was about having a formatting channel and having that like very much on and off energy. So, when, when I'm on, like today, I've just recorded 6 podcasts back to back because that's what felt good. So my pulse of creativity, of go, of life force is on. But I have other days where I am completely blah and I almost feel, and I remember still the word that reader used was melancholy, which is very much about like a formatting channel that is in the off position. And understanding that about myself and not making it wrong for me to go through these stages of like, woohoo, create, and then like, bleh. Like, again, I used to have a lot of self-judgment about that. So that was another gift. Anyway, as time went on, I also had a really close friend that was getting more into human design. And some of the things that she was saying, like, oh, I'm just a 5-1. I'm here to trigger the fuck out of you, da, da, da. And it was just like, this feels like it's being used as an excuse for bad behavior. And I'm not saying everyone does that, but that was that particular person. I just felt there was like a box or a set of rules. And I'm like, I don't believe that there is any set of rules about how to be us apart from our felt sense of what feels good. And again, that changes over time. Anyway, fast forward. I had a Asterian astrology reading, which is not strictly true sidereal, but is not based on modern astrology. And the resonance I had in my body, I literally felt my entire back body, which is my spidey sense body signal that like truth. It's like a blinking light. I had that through my entire body for that whole reading. And I was like, oh my God. So I thought I was an Aquarian, but no, if we're talking in this system, I'm not an Aquarian, I'm Capricorn. And then it changes to blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I have to say at the time, I got really discombobulated because I didn't realize that to my own detriment, I was also over-identifying with a label. So to be honest, I quite liked the idea of being an Aquarian. Like Aquarians are quirky and eccentric and they're humanitarian and they're disruptive. There's a disruptive kind of, edge to being an Aquarian. And so when someone was like Capricorn, I'm like, it's a bit boring. Sorry, all the Capricorns out there, but that was honestly my kind of frame. Anyway, I had an aha moment though, because I was like, okay, so if I'm saying that this is fully resonant and he had such specific information about life purpose and what I'm meant to be doing in the world and all of those things, and I was like, crap, that is exactly what I do. Like, you can't make this shit up. And so then it was like, okay, we need to actually look at what human design is based on, because I knew that human design was partly based on astrology, but what astrology, right? And modern astrology uses the exact same pinned positions in the sky of the constellations without considering that there's a thing called the precession of equinoxes, which changes across time where things are, and also uses a assigned perfectly equal pieces of pie for each of the 12 star signs. When you look at true sidereal astrology, which is so much more resonant for me and so many of the people that I work with, that actually uses, or the midpoint calculation method that I personally stand by for true sidereal, founded by Ethan Chimenti, who's going to be on the podcast very soon. Exciting. So that actually has 3 constellations, because there's a 13th constellation that the sun passes through in December. And it actually looks at the true widths of the constellation. So Virgo is a big wide constellation, whereas others are much smaller. Anyway, long story short, I fell down this rabbit hole of like, if I thought I was a 3-5 generator and I've been trying to run my business as a 3-5 generator, and some of what that reading said is perfectly resonant, but some of it really isn't. And I don't know, I was starting to feel like I just don't get human design. Maybe it's just not meant for me. Anyway, I found True Sidereal Human Design. I've since fallen down a rabbit hole. I've since signed up to be doing a full-on intuitive human design coaching certification with the beautiful Annalena Fuchs, who was just on our podcast. And I have already been doing readings for clients using tropical human design around the visibility, marketing, life purpose, and also very specifically around communication, specifics. Sorry, brain fart. So when we're talking about like the top level human design understanding, like manifestor, like splenic authority, etc., that is like bird's eye view. What I'm doing with clients is actually down in the specifics of what gates are in all of the different places where life purpose, genius, voice of visibility, and marketing or / communication, it gives you such a beautiful picture. And I have since diving into this new human design through the lens of True Sidereal using the midpoint calculations, I reckon it's been 5 months now, and it is blowing my mind. And here is the thing, and this is why I think for a lot of people that are really entrenched in human design as they know it, which is often through the tropical system, when I say, have you ever looked at True Sidereal, the immediate reaction is one of like, that's not the right way to do it. And again, that's a bit of dogma, right? Because the human race in general is designed to evolve. But also, I heard something this week which blew my mind, and I have to research it more. So this is just a kind of introductory understanding for me. That Ra, who first downloaded the whole human design thing, actually understood the precession of equinoxes and the fact that that would shift things over time. But human design was already this huge, big field of knowledge that was very edgy at the time, let's say. And he also knew that if he wanted to introduce this into human consciousness, he couldn't also introduce a whole thing that said, maybe modern astrology is not actually what's going on in the sky, which it isn't. That is something that we can very easily prove. And so he has not included that in his first. So I'm like, hang on a minute. Even the founder of human design understood this. But what he was basically saying was right now, 1987, when he first downloaded or had this beautiful like channeled experience that, gave birth to the human design system, he knew that that was too much for the human race to cope with, which is wild to me, which is, that's one of the things about being a disruptor and a paver of new pathways is sometimes you know that there's this huge body of understanding of wisdom that you want to bring to the world, but you've got to start at this very starting point, just opening the field of possibilities by like a degree at a time over time, because otherwise you might blow people's minds and also be labeled as a lunatic. That has happened many times in history. So anyway, I have been using True Sidereal Midpoint human design calculations to run charts for clients. I'm calling these charts Genius U because one of the big things I talk about in my G-Spot program and also in my human design course that I have, which is just an introductory course just to kind of get a handle on things if you're very new to human design, which is also called Genius by Design. These readings, people are taking it's a 60-page report. It's an enormous report, but it's something that is crafted individually for people. So it's not, if you go to an astrology site, you can get the astrology report and it'll say things like, with your sun in Aquarius, you are blah, blah, blah. And it is very formulaic and it's not individually crafted. That's not how I approach Genius U and human design in general. This is about me combining intuitive coaching gifts with what I know about the client or what they've told me, and also their specific questions, stumbling blocks, evolutions that are calling that they want to move into, but they feel a little bit afraid of. into this beautiful report and then recording an audio intuitive kind of interpretation, which ends up being about an hour or so. They have been the most wild, beautiful evolution for me. And here's something that I am really understanding finally. When I'm reading a chart like this for someone who's very aware already of their tropical human design, a couple of the people I've read for are actually tropical human design readers already. And they're like, oh, okay. It's almost like, and it's so funny that they say this because this was my reaction. It's almost like tropical human design, and I have heard it explained like this before as well. So this is not my novel idea, please be aware. Tropical human design is like the me that I have been living as in the first half of my life. So it's very, first few decades. And then when you gave me my true sidereal chart, it's like what I'm stepping into, the next evolution. And because I work mainly with midlife clients, not always, but mainly with midlife clients, I feel like there is this change that goes from the first part of life is very much about living from ego, getting out there and exploring in terms of like the external world's impact and relationship with us and what that means for us. And then the second part of our journey is very much about that wild woman leading, but also allowing soul to lead instead of ego, right? So it's really exciting to me that when people read these charts, they're like, oh, this feels like this next evolution. And this is something that someone said to me yesterday, and I was like, oh my God, yes, that's it. It's like the tropical feels like my first level of understanding, and it helped me to get a kind of starting point of sense of self. And then the true sidereal is like this fully resonant next step. And one thing that is very interesting, because true sidereal, so anything that is based on true sky is going to be around about 24 degrees behind what modern astrology says that is happening in the sky. So when you think about that, you might wonder about like, well, what does that mean about in terms of like even simple things like where's my conscious sun, where's my whatever. But what I've found, because we're tilting everything by 24 degrees, it's not 24 exactly, but around that, all of the positions of the stars in relation to each other has not changed because everything goes at the same time. What does change and what seems to be this pattern is like one of the parts of like modern astrology that I didn't really want to lose was the Aquarian part. But in my true sidereal astrology chart, Aquarius plays a very big part in my design, in my astrology, according to the actual sky at the moment I was born, not the assigned sky as per modern astrology. And so even with my clients that know their tropical chart really well and, they're very identified with certain parts of their chart, they're like, oh, that's still a part of my chart, but it's just playing out in a different way. That has been really cool. So here's my like final kind of tying up understanding. When I had my first human design reading, first of all, I am going to take very, very full responsibility for the fact that, that reading was a lot of information, and information does not mean embodiment. And that is not the reader's fault at all. That's me going, oh, I want to know this about myself, but then not actually living through it and experimenting with it, right? But I feel like the 3 part of that profile, that was really that permission slip. Because I'm now understanding that 6-2 is part of my profile lines, like 6, they live like 3s for the first part of their lives as well. Bra malfunction today. Sorry, people who are watching the video. I need to tighten those straps up. Yeah, so that's why the 3 resonated. That's why some of the things really resonated. What I will also say to you is trying to operate my business through the lens of being a generator. And whilst a lot of me does like responding, and that actually comes from, when we're talking about types, we're talking about bird's eye view again, but each channel has a different energy. So you can be a manifester and still have generated channels, right? So just keep that in mind. Like the type is like the biggest category that we filter people into. It doesn't give you the nuance of your energetics. But yeah, something I really struggled with, thinking that I was a 3-5 generator, was not being able to kind of initiate. Now, I know it's not as simple as that, but just let me talk in general terms. When I realized that actually manifester is probably a truer, and it's not probably, that is the stars that were in the sky when I was born. So by definition, manifester. That makes so much more sense to me, because a manifester is an initiator. They have a natural creative flow, and then they have an off time, which again, that's why the formatting channel really felt right for me. But so much more of the characteristics of being a manifester speak to me. So I guess what I'm saying is, no matter what human design experience you've had, no matter what reading you've had, no matter what chart you're looking at, please don't make it about rules. Make it about resonance. So if you want to use my colander approach, put it all in the colander and let anything that doesn't resonate at this time in your life with this lived experience just fall on through. It gets filtered out, and you just keep the gold that feels like the resonance right now. So resonance, not rules, and nuance at the individual. And this is the other thing that I don't know how I've missed this when I've come across human design before. But originally, the whole lens through which human design was downloaded and given to the world was as a science of individuation, differentiation. Each individual having beauty, potential, power, gold inside of them, genius, magnificence. Everyone. But what we've done, and it's interesting to me too that when Ra first brought this to the world, there were no types. That was brought in over time. So if we're talking about the science of individuation, of differentiation, of celebrating individual energetics and differences, preferences, flow states, what works, what doesn't for individuals, why then are we so fixated on making rules like, oh, I'm a projector, I can't do that? And even what I just said about, being a generator, and I felt like, oh, I can't initiate, but my nature is to initiate. So then I was like, but I'm not doing me right. It's like the only thing you can do when you're in your self energy is be yourself. There is no rules to follow. It's just turn up and be yourself. No more complicated. So yes, amazing experience. I'd really love to know, particularly if you're someone who is like fully into human design, how does that land in your body? Because my intention is not to come across saying, well, if you're following tropical human design, there's something wrong, because I don't believe that. I believe that tropical human design was what we needed to go from our level of understanding back in 1987 to our level of understanding now. And I believe that true sidereal, true sky-based human design is the next step in the evolution of both our understanding of ourselves, but also before we step into the next era in human design, which I have to actually work that out, because what traditional human design says about the cross of the sleeping phoenix is that it will be February 2027. So I'm guessing that that's actually going to be more like March or April, but I also I'm not clear on whether true sidereal then changes the cross that we're going into as well. That's a whole other kettle of fish, far out. Anyway, too much brain power for this episode. So yeah, I would love to know. I am definitely going to be talking much more about true sidereal. In fact, it's my intention very shortly to start sharing what gates the sun is moving through, and also the moon gates, because I think it's important for there to be options for people to feel into and feel resonance or not. And when there's a collective consciousness that says the sun is in this sign, when that's actually not what's happening in the true sky, it takes paradigm shifters to offer a different way of looking at things so that people have choice. I'm not saying that people will go, oh yes, golly, amazing, wow. And I will be very, very honest that this is like, I'm right at the beginning of diving into this. And even with that, I am so lit up by the level of resonance that these charts are opening for people, where they're like, oh my God, first of all, there's magnificence and magic in every chart. And I am obsessed with looking and learning and just being able to reflect someone's genius back to them, particularly if they've got like fear or doubt running the show at the time. But also that this is what I've been working with clients for my entire life, like even my corporate career. The fact that everyone has a gift to bring to the world, and when we don't bring our gift to the world, we leave a hole in the fabric of the energetic matrix of happy, healthy human community. And that's not a good thing. So if nothing else, this is another lens through which you can look at your genius and go, oh, okay. And then, of course, the next step I'm going to invite you to is surrender to your magnificence instead of fighting for your learned limitation, right? But that is a whole other episode. So I would love to know how this lands. It is definitely not my intention to poo-poo tropical human design. I think it's here for a reason. I think for some people it will continue to resonate. And I also very deeply believe that as time goes on and we get further and further and further and further away from what's happening in the sky, there will be more and more and more people wanting to lean into true sidereal. So at the moment, as I move my entire website to a completely new web home, I am actually offering Genius U reports for half price. Because here's what I still know to be true about myself, whether you want to label me a 3-5 generator or label me a manifestor 6-2, what I know to be true about myself is the best way for me to learn is to get into action and experience and experience and experience. So you get the benefit of me wanting to read probably 100 more charts at least to really, really practice this energetics and the way that I want to deliver this information so it's not so overwhelming, but actually does open up an experiment to actually lean into your genius. So I'm offering these Genius U reports at half price at the moment. So I will drop the link into the show notes. That means they are $222 US. And I really want to reiterate again, this is not an AI-generated, generic human design tick and flick report. This is me actually feeling into your energetics, following my intuition, looking at the questions that you've got for me, and actually really, really diving into the nuance of your individual genius. So they do take about 2 to 3 weeks to get back to you. And depending on how much response we get, if there's an avalanche, I will definitely reach out and say, all reports are read in the order that they've been received. So if there's any delay, I will absolutely get back to you. I always trust the timing though. So anyway, that's it from me. I hope you're having a beautiful day. And regardless of where you stand on the human design end of things, just remembering that there are no rules of how to be you. There is just your way. Okay? Your way. And that is an internally felt knowing, not an external anything. So I love you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.